box now. It's time for fresh rubber.
I think it must be podcast inputting time, Gav. What do you reckon?
I don't know, mate. I've just woken up, actually. I stayed up for the GP last night.
Oh, I'm yawning now, but that was such a snooze fest. Oh, what was the point? No, I kid.
Do you know what, Chase? A lot of people. I've read already reactions. People saying that was a boring race. I mean, I don't think it was a boring race. I thought it was a technical race. There wasn't a lot of overtakes, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. And I loved that there was this strategic element between basically the only two drivers on the circuit, the two McLaren drivers, about whether or not the medium tyre was going to last the whole second stint of the race, and whether or not Piastri would need to come in and pit for a third set of tyres, and whether Norris would be able to then zoom off into the distance. I thought that sort of the strategic cat and mouse strategy game, that sometimes makes for a more suspenseful and entertaining race than 15 tyre changes and 100 overtakes on track. I quite enjoyed it. Did you find it hard to stay awake during the race though?
I'm going to be honest. I sat there till midnight and it was still raining, and I just went to bed. So I watched it today.
Sometimes that's the best way though.
So I need it. I need it fresh. I need it fresh to be able to talk about it with you. But you stayed up for a bit of it and then watched the rest today?
I was having flashbacks to 2021. Did you watch the Belgian Grand Prix back in 2021? Do you remember that race?
I did, yeah.
The race that didn't quite happen. It was the 2 laps behind the safety
Didn't
car.
happen.
Yeah, I was having flashbacks to 2021 between 11 and 12 midnight and thinking, is it going to be another one of those? This is a real howler. And all of the broadcasters, and if you check out any online live streamers who do like watch-alongs, you think, gosh, how are you going to fill a whole hour or more of content when there's basically just ducks on the track and pretty much nothing else? So I watched the first half, but yeah, I couldn't make it all the way to the end.
It was I tell you what I found really interesting about this race. I mean, and I want to kind of take in the sprint a little bit as well. But it felt like the sprint race was very much around kind of the issue of downforce setting, right? Because at Spa, the first sector and the third sector are quite high speed and quite straight line. So you kind of want low downforce for that, right? Which is what Max brought to the sprint and did super well. The middle sector, with all its kind of heavy cornering, is very high downforce. So it was really interesting to me after Max wins the sprint with this kind of incredibly brave driving, really, to take on some of that cornering, even in the dry, with a low downforce setup. And what I mean by that is the car is not sticking to the road as much. And then everyone kind of then realizing it was going to rain, and any thoughts of people having a little bit less downforce kind of went out the window, right? Because when it's wet, you really need to stay on the track. You really need a decent amount of downforce. Although I think McLaren, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think McLaren did wind a little bit of downforce out of their car because they got a bit spooked by Max's pace in the sprint, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good call. I'm not sure that you do need that much downforce if you think about how well Max Verstappen performed at Silverstone at the last round in the British Grand Prix. He had barely the smallest of wings back then, and he still managed to make it work. He had one spin. Let's not talk about that. But Max is such a fun driver to watch, because even with the smallest of wing, he can still make it stick. He can make it stick in a way that others can't. And it was, I thought, brave, amazing driving, really great defensive driving in the sprint for Verstappen to hold off Piastri, who had clearly some advantages, but he had the right downforce setting at the time. And yeah, as you say, they all got spooked by the weather forecast. probably rightly so, because they might have all been flying off track if they'd gone with their Saturday setups on Sunday. But just that classic conundrum at Spa, as you say, where the middle sector is the one where you need all the downforce because that's where all the turns happen, and doing that trade-off between high downforce, low downforce, high top speed, those setups is such a game. And interestingly enough, it's not the first sprint round this year that we've had that kind of difference between Saturday and Sunday. If you think back to Miami, there was quite a wet sprint race that we had in Miami, and then a dry race on Sunday. So there's something about sprint races and sprint rounds this year that's causing such chaos and difference from Saturday to Sunday, that it's much more fun than if it wasn't the case. If it was just like an extra stint, which sometimes it can be if it's dry, both for the sprint and for the Grand Prix. I had so much fun watching Verstappen this weekend.
The thing with the sprint as well is, obviously, rather than getting 3 practice sessions, you only get the 1, right? So no one had really tested, or who tested the hard tyre? It was Haas. Haas tested the hard tyre, but basically no one else had tested the hard tyre. So when Lando opted to put the hard tyre on, the data just wasn't there for the team to have confidence that would or not work. So you heard on the radio Lando's engineer say, "Look, do you want to grab the hard tire and see if it goes to the end?" And Lando's like, "Yep, let's do it," because he knew that was his only chance of catching Oscar. But there was no data really to support what that hard tire would do. And actually, I think that hard tire came into its own in the race, and had poor old Lando not made a few errors. I don't know if I'd call them unforced errors. There was going wide at La Source, a bit of a lock-up at Poulon, and then I think another kind of 6/10 kind of error towards the end. I think Lando was hunting so hard that those errors were inevitable. So I don't think he should beat himself up for going a bit wide or having a bit of a lock-up. He was really fighting with everything he could to hunt down Piastri. The only sad thing is that I think cumulatively that would have basically, had he not made any of those 3 errors, probably would have put him in DRS to Piastri by the end of the race. So we could have ended up with an even more exciting showdown at the end had Lando just finessed it perfectly. But who can finesse a lap perfectly 48 times in a row under that pressure?
Well, especially in those conditions as well. It's the rain affected the start of the race. So by the time the middle of the race comes around and the track is drying, that's great. There is a dry line to go on, but it doesn't mean that the whole track is dry. So you go a little bit offline and you're really in a high risk, maybe low reward situation. And it's kind of amazing, actually, that Norris didn't go into the barrier when he went off at Pouhon. That's one of the fastest parts of that section. And the barriers just aren't that far away, actually, at that point, even though it looks like it's far away, given the speed that you hit going through that pretty much flat out. Super impressive. And yeah, it was Norris really just giving it everything. And I think he can hold his head up high after that performance. It didn't work out for him.
Absolutely.
Something's held him back. I think we talked about before we came on that, he had some battery pack issues behind the safety car, which ultimately led to him failing to keep the lead on lap 1. I don't think you can put that down to him underperforming. I think you can put that down to a little bit of bad luck from how that safety car restart happened. The way he did not give Piastri any breathing room at all, I think was important. And especially when you consider that the hard tyre this round was something like 2 steps harder than the regular single step harder tyre. And they were still doing comparably the similar lap times. So he was really pushing that hard tyre. He was getting the most out of that hard tyre and not giving Piastri any chance to take a breather or to get any kind of sort of safety margin. He didn't give him a chance to have a pit window. It was pretty much, as you say, 44 flat out laps around the longer circuit in F1. It was so impressive to watch.
And remarkably, not a red flag or a crash in sight for essentially a race that started in those conditions and, is a tricky course. You would have thought that every team on the grid would have been waiting for a safety car pit window, but it never came. Everyone kept it on track for the most part. Should we talk about winners and losers? Some of the biggest winners and some of the biggest losers. I think Lewis. I think you have to say Lewis, even though he came in at P7, was one of the biggest winners of today. Starting in the pit lane, helped obviously by being brought up to the back of the pack through the safety car start, admittedly. But Lewis's push through the pack was kind of reminded me of the old days of Lewis when something would go wrong with the car when he was at Mercedes and he would fight all the way through to a win or through to some ridiculously high position. But to fight with a car that he's still clearly not super comfortable with all the way through to 7th was remarkable. The other thing I'll say, apart from being brought to the back of the pack by the safety car, incredible strategy. I'm going to say this. Incredible strategy by Ferrari to pit him first out of the whole grid for the slicks. Says a lot about their confidence in Lewis being the guinea pig for that. But also, gosh, I can't believe I'm saying good strategy for Ferrari. In my mind, one of the teams to fumble strategy the most over the years that I've been watching F1. That was fantastic, wasn't it?
Well, you say a broken clock is still right twice a day, so maybe that's just. No, I don't want to drag Ferrari.
That's
too much.
good.
I think
I think that's probably fair, actually, Jace.
But I think the story of Lewis's weekend has got to be such a sort of phoenix rising from the ashes type story, because he qualified 18th for the sprint race. He got knocked out of Q1 for the regular qualifying due to track limits violation. The guy could not have had his head lower coming into Sunday, and he didn't really perform in the sprint race as well. He gained 2 or 3 places. And when Lewis sees, or he gets a sniff, there's some rain. I can smell some humidity.
Oh, the rain.
You can see it building him up and up and up. And when he gets into that cockpit, he knows he is one of the rain masters. And to see him sort of the body language of that car zooming through the field, doing overtakes where you really don't normally see overtakes at Spa.
Absolutely.
Oh my word. It was so amazing. So loved watching Lewis carve it up. And when he kind of stalled out behind Albon, I thought, fair enough. He's made it his way the way up to P7. He'll give Alex a run for his money, but Alex is known. He's like the Thai Minister of Defense. You remember Perez used to be called the Mexico Minister of Defense? Yeah. Albon just has this uncanny ability to hold the best drivers behind him lap after lap. He soaks up the pressure, doesn't make mistakes. He's good. He was a solid P6 today. But oh my word, Hamilton, such joy watching him. I was
going to say like a moth to the flame, but I think, and in fact, this could be a good podcast title for this podcast, like a moth to the rain.
I love it. That's great.
You like it?
I do.
It's a dad joke. That
I was thinking also this morning. No, not this morning. Yesterday, maybe Antonelli will get some of that joy as well, but it was not to be.
Oh,
he's also.
I was going to say, would you lead us off on the biggest losers of this weekend? And I think you've begun. Tell us let the emotions spill, Jace. How do you feel? How are you feeling about this?
So
the kid's rattled, isn't he?
My word! And the interview with him after, I think it was sprint quali, he said something to the effect of, "I'm in a dark tunnel right now, and I just need to get out of the tunnel." And I thought, oh my word. Toto, go and...
It's not Monaco, Antonelli.
Go and put an arm around the kid or something. Give him something.
Yeah.
He needs a real... he needs a bit of a mental boost. He needs something just to help him get out of the doldrums that he's in after a bunch of bad results. And I think him getting fastest lap today helps. I think doing a good number of overtakes in both sprint and Grand Prix helps. But yeah, the poor guy. My heart went out to him when he said that, and I thought, oh, someone needs to give him a cuddle. Poor thing.
I mean, he was in tears in the pen. He was wiping tears off his face, the poor guy. So yeah, poor Kimi. I mean, I think everyone still has ridiculously high hopes for the kid, and I think, as we talked about last week, this is part of it. This is part of being a rookie, is trying to balance that feeling of like, I'm in F1, I'm a superhuman, and also the actual lived experience and reality of that can be brutal. And everyone on that grid has gone through it, except Lance Stroll, who can't feel anything. But
he's impervious.
And has no consequences to doing well or not well.
Yeah, fair enough.
George Russell, Mr. Consistency, chilling at number 5, back in his favourite spot.
Bit of a lonely race for George. He was just chilling out.
Bit of a lonely race.
Yeah, that's good. I think it's great to see.
Hey, do you know what? I wanted to ask you something.
Go on.
I wanted to ask you something. What happened to Isaac?
Oh, I was going to ask you the same.
I know.
I've got in my notes.
I know that he missed. He was very late to go to the slicks, and that really did him in. It did a few people in, Ocon being one of them as well. But what happened? I wasn't following that part of the race. Can you tell me?
All I can remember is that he kept getting overtaken. That's my standout memory of Hadjar during the race. He kept slipping back and back, and then eventually he pitted twice.
Oh gosh!
So that was a no show for him. So yeah, I just wrote ouch next to Hadjar. That's how well I think his day went. The other loser,
because he did well in the sprint, didn't he?
Let me see.
Yeah, 8th.
Yeah, indeed, and he qualified high.
Do you know what?
Hadjar qualified 8th.
He qualified
for the
high.
Grand Prix, yeah. So that's got to be strategy.
Yeah.
I would say, yeah. Let's go with that.
Let's go with that.
And his teammate qualified 9th, finished 8th. So there's got to be something there. I mean, when we get a chance to dig deep into this, maybe we'll get an answer. But I guess that's a tale of two teams right there, or a tale of two drivers. The other loser, and I was so frustrated when I was watching this during the race, was Hülkenberg. Hülkenberg finished 12th, pitted from 10th, failed to make any progress, didn't even get back to where he pitted from. Why? Why did they pit him from P10? I just don't understand. His teammate finished 9th, and he just gave away that point. Do not understand.
Why did they pit him? Was this after he'd gone on to mediums? Yeah. Huh.
Bizarre.
Well, everyone else on the radio is saying, like, we're going long, we're going to do the one stop.
Absolutely.
And they're like, not you, Hülkenberg. We're going to chuck you right back to the back.
We believe in you. You've got this, mate. Yeah, I don't understand. He pitted from 10th. Very confusing. That one was hard to explain.
The mediums just didn't fall off a cliff, I think. Everyone thought they were going to fall off a cliff, and sure, like, we saw pace dropping on them, but we didn't see those mediums fall off a cliff, and that's really interesting.
Yeah, I wonder if it was just the drying track. It was more gentle on the tyres, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah, the other one who had a good race, I thought, was Gasly. He was just like so solid, holding off. There was a little mini DRS train of 5 cars, and he was at the front of it for almost half the race. And he just did not falter, held off attack time and time again, and managed to score 1 point for his troubles. And considering how poorly his sprint race went, where he qualified, he qualified 8th, and then had a fuel or a water pump issue. And so they had him in the pit lane, and he was out of the car for the sprint race. And then they said, oh, no. Just because we have a problem doesn't mean you're not going to start the race. And so he started the race 2 laps down and just had his own little private testing session around Spa-Francorchamps. And then they retired him early. So half a weekend just wasted for Gasly. But then he came good, finished 10. I thought that was impressive.
Do you know what one of my favourite parts of the build-up to this race was, Jason? Was watching Brundle standing down at Eau Rouge and watching those cars at that speed. It actually felt like, you remember when we were in Melbourne and it was our first GP that we'd ever been to, and kind of the smell of the, you know, kind of the gearbox smell and the sparks and the feeling of speed. I feel like this segment with Brundle down at Eau Rouge, which if you don't know is this kind of incredible high speed kind of left-right turn that's kind of up a hill that kind of grinds the plank, the kind of the part of the bottom, the floor of the car against the tarmac. And it was just exhilarating to watch on TV. And I've just not had that feeling of speed. You can almost smell it. And there's this brown stripe up Eau Rouge where all the planks are just wearing down. And if you remember, the plank wear is so heavy on this section of the track that this is why George Russell was disqualified last year, right? It was that so much of his plank. It was either was it that he was weighed and the car was lighter than it should have been.
I think it was because he did
some of
one
that
stop as well. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying in addition to that, I think it's because he did a one stop.
No, but it was because he did a one stop. So yeah, it was because he did a one stop, but also because I think people were saying that it was because the wear on the plank does actually take grams off the car as well. But yeah, I thought that was unbelievable, the compression that you get at this particular track with the downforce.
You know what I also loved about the Eau Rouge Raidillon section was they had a camera on Hamilton's suspension facing backwards, and they showed him going through that section at times. That was awesome. I mean, the innovation in camera footage that they've done this year has just been brilliant to watch. I'm loving all these weird stationary drone shots that they're chucking in at various points, putting cameras in unusual places. The visual package of F1 is so much better this year than it has been in years previous.
Yeah, they're just upping the game, aren't they, with production value. Something I wanted to talk about was the fact that I didn't know to what degree. We've talked a little bit about Lando. Again, if you're wondering why Lando was overtaken by Piastri on that first lap, part of it could have just been Oscar's great driving, but Lando was saying over the radio, "Where's my pack? Where's my pack?" And I've actually not heard drivers refer to the battery as pack, but it's battery pack. And he'd lost. He'd seemed to lose a lot of battery charge, which he would have deployed tactically to kind of stay ahead on that first DRS straight, even though DRS wasn't enabled. He would have deployed that battery. And what I didn't realize is that the car itself kind of manages part of that battery deployment. I just thought it was a button on the car that the driver hits. They kind of store battery power, harvest battery power through the lap. And when they want a bit of extra push to defend or to overtake, they hit a button. But actually the car does a bunch of management on its own, obviously through computers, on how that battery is deployed. So poor old Lando gets to that first kind of high-speed straight, presumably goes to press his super duper battery boosting power, and it's just not there, or there's a very limited amount of it. But I thought that was really interesting, and I'd love to understand more of what the computers in the car are deciding for the driver and what the driver has control of themselves. But that was another thing that I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I think it's curious that they don't have that really well dialed in by now as well. Maybe it's a brand new technology that they're trialing this year. But I think we had the same issue with Verstappen as well. He was complaining about clipping going down the Camel Straight, and that was the broadcasters seemed to say that was for the same reason, because the car was still learning the circuit or when to deploy the engine.
Learning. This word learning. Yeah. The car, almost like the car is like a large language model, kind of like scraping the internet, like, how do I drive again? Like, kind of the car is learning. Okay, cool. Is the car self-aware? Yeah, interesting stuff. Anything else that stood out to you, Jace, in this race that is...
Yeah,
go on.
I think the highlight of the race, probably for me, at least in the build-up, was seeing Nico Rosberg gate crash the grid walk, and I want nothing other than Martin Brundle and Nico Rosberg on the grid walk for every round. That was just amazing. Nico he's so unfiltered, and he does not care who he offends as he goes about asking his questions. So he will go up and doorstep Jos Verstappen and ask him for a comment about the Christian Horner situation, point blank, face to face, and say, "Oh,
it's beautiful.
Oh, you're quiet now. You don't want to talk now, but you were happy to talk last week." It's just brilliant. The guy has no fear, and I love that. And I think Jos Verstappen is someone who has a general aura of fearfulness on in the paddock. So to see Nico just kind of go up and do that is amazing. And they, as a comedy duo, is amazing as well. Especially when Nico doesn't appear to know the rules about what you can and can't do. So he just goes around and just does what he wants, does his Nico Rosberg thing. And there's Martin, who normally would be doing that himself, but he's like, oh, hang on, I've got a small child here with me. I've got to sort of make sure that he doesn't get into trouble. Great comedy. I love that. Every little bit of it.
Do you know, it's funny you talk, I mean, you know how I feel about Nico. I could listen to him. I just wish I could listen to him as I went to sleep at night, just asking offensive questions to people. But there was a great interview this weekend where Brundle, actually the same two, Brundle and Nico, are being asked, you know, what they think the reason for Christian Horner leaving is. And Brundle's got this kind of like, I mean, he was friends with Horner, so I think he doesn't quite know how to answer it in a way that's particularly critical, but he's kind of like, well, you know, I think Horner wanted to really be a decision maker across marketing and press and the drivers. and I think, you know, basically, you know, the team, you know, kind of the you know, the higher ups didn't really think that was right. And so that's why it ended. And Nico's like, no, it's because he lost all the top talent from the team. He stopped short, interested. And I'm sitting on the sofa going, and the employment tribunal that's coming up, you know, kind of like, but I was like, come on, Nico, just like tell it how it is. Yes, Horner was, you know, it was amazing at building Red Bull, but, you know, he was really showing some weaknesses in terms of a cohesive team at the end. And, you know, in fact, I think Nico said, Joss said 1 year ago, pretty much today, that if Horner stays, he's going to tear this team apart. And that's what I love about Nico. He's just going to be like, oh, I remember when Joss said that, and I'm not afraid to remind the world that, you know, Max's dad said that. So maybe this was always going to happen. That was kind of a bit of a prophecy. If you were listening, you heard the best driver in the world's dad say, I don't like this guy. So anyway, yeah, lots of love for Nico. Of course, lots of love for the teddy bear that is Brundle, and a good duo.
The other highlight for me was the circuit, the Spa-Francorchamps circuit. It's one of those circuits that have the ultimate difficulty factor when it comes to the driving. You know, the bravery, and we've been there watching as they go whoosh by in front of us thinking, wow, that's brave. To imagine what it would be like to be in a cockpit going down from La Source, through Eau Rouge, up Raidillon, and along that Kemmel Straight in that kind of spray at the start of the race, and to keep your foot pinned that entire time when the track is wet, conditions are bad. It's so impressive. And then the whole rest of the circuit, the way that it unfolds, the undulations, the corners, the difficulty of going around some of the corners because they camber away from the inside of the corner. So you're fighting against the car as you're turning around. I just love this circuit. It doesn't always give us great races. Today, I thought it was a very entertaining race for lots of different reasons, but I love the Spa-Francorchamps circuit. I think it looks amazing. I loved the Belgian colours that they had painted on the curbs. The grandstands were full of people. It had an amazing festival atmosphere, it seemed, even despite the rain. So the environment for the race was just top-notch, in my opinion.
Should we go next year? Should we do a fresh rubber?
I would love to.
Should we do a fresh rubber live? We should. Let's do that. Let's say that we'll go to Spa next year.
I think we've had that response after each round this year so far. I'm noticing a pattern. Every race we think, oh, we should definitely go there. Oh man,
it's Austria. It's Austria or Belgium for me. They're the two, and it's no coincidence that they're both nestled in picturesque, beautiful green, lush meadows, surrounded by mountains. Like, it's kind of like the hills are alive with the sound of F1, isn't it?
Bring back V10s, mate.
Do you like that?
Bring back V10s. Can we talk a little bit about the McLaren dominance that we're seeing this year? I've been looking at this.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Having kind of a rear view mirror vibe on this lately, and I was looking at the standings and the results per round, and it struck me that since the start of the season, the McLaren drivers have only missed out on 4 podiums, including every Grand Prix and every sprint race. They've only missed 4, 2 apiece. For Piastri, it was
dominance.
What's that?
Dominance.
Yeah. And this was apparently their 6th 1-2 finish for this season. And their record for that in a single season is 10 from 1988. That was the Prost-Senna dominant year. And there's still another 9 rounds of the season left. So they could easily smash that record of 1-2 finishes. The consistency, we talk about George Russell being Mr. Consistent. Those 2 drivers, they are on it. They're on it from lap 1, round 1, right through to round 13. They've only made a handful of mistakes that have cost them big time. For Norris, probably the biggest one would be the Canadian Grand Prix. But they are just on it this season. Operationally, driving, the speed that they're able to bring, the consistency, qualifying high, finishing high. I mean, it's so impressive this year to see them doing that. And I think it's a bit frustrating that it's coming at the end of the regulation set. Maybe they can carry this form into the 2026 regs and beyond. They've got the informed drivers. They'll have most likely the proper power unit. Maybe they'll have the aero continuity. I don't know. But it's super impressive. We could be seeing Red Bull 2023 type dominance by the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, Red Bull in 2023 won every race but one, if I remember correctly. So that is on another level. And I read today that none of the front-running teams have any meaningful upgrades to bring or planned for the rest of the year. So there will be upgrades, but nothing that they think can dramatically change their cars' operating capacity. So it's pretty safe to say that McLaren are going to continue to run away with this season. It also gives McLaren a bit of headspace to think about next year, maybe more than others, although I'd be surprised if anyone is. I think the very fact that teams aren't thinking too much about upgrades for the rest of the year or big upgrades probably means that every team's focus is turning to next year, which makes perfect sense. But yeah, just think about the confidence for Oscar and Lando going into next year, regardless of the machinery that's under them. They are absorbing a winning mentality. They are learning to win back-to-back regularly. And one final thing I'll say about this.
Hi there, it's Jason from the future. If you're wondering where the last 10 minutes of our episode went, well, you're not alone. It turns out that Gavin's audio had a DNF. But don't worry, at Fresh Rubber we don't dwell on our mistakes, we learn from them. And I'd like to announce that from the next round, the Hungarian Grand Prix, we'll be introducing our mid-season upgrade package, which will ensure that we have crystal clear audio from lights to checkered flag. So, stay tuned. We'll be back next week with a debrief of the Hungarian Grand Prix. Until then, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you soon.
You've been listening to the Fresh Rubber Podcast. See you at the Apex.